The desert sun blazed mercilessly over the rocky terrain of Afghanistan as Staff Sergeant Maria Gonzalez adjusted her rifle scope for the third time in 10 minutes. The SEAL team had been moving through the mountain pass for hours, their mission clear but dangerous: extract a captured intelligence officer from a Taliban compound nestled deep in enemy territory. Maria wasn't supposed to be there. As a Marine Corps sniper attached to the Navy SEAL unit, she had volunteered for what many considered a suicide mission. The compound they were approaching housed not just the captured officer, but also served as a training ground for some of the most skilled marksmen the Taliban had ever produced. Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison, the team leader, held up his fist, signaling the squad to halt. Through his binoculars, he could see the compound about 800 meters ahead. What he saw made his blood run cold. The intelligence reports had mentioned heavy resistance, but this was beyond anything they had prepared for. "Count 7 positions," Morrison whispered into his radio. Elevated. Professional setup. Maria crawled forward on her belly, using the natural rock formations as cover. Through her scope, she could see what had Morrison concerned. 7 sniper nests, perfectly positioned to create overlapping fields of fire. Anyone approaching the compound would be walking into a killing zone with no escape routes. Petty Officer First Class Rodriguez, the team's demolitions expert, moved up beside Morrison. "Sir, those aren't regular fighters. Look at the positioning, the camouflage, the sight lines. These guys know what they're doing." Morrison nodded grimly. Each sniper position had been carefully chosen to cover different approach angles. The enemy marksmen had turned the entire valley into a death trap. Even with their advanced training and equipment, the SEAL team would be sitting ducks trying to cross that open ground. "Too many snipers on us," Petty Officer Williams murmured, echoing what every member of the team was thinking. The mission seemed impossible. 7 trained enemy snipers versus 8 American Special Operations personnel, with no cover and limited ammunition. Maria studied each position through her scope, her mind racing through calculations. Distance, wind speed, elevation, target movement patterns. She had been the top graduate in her sniper school class, but this situation was unlike anything she had trained for. 7 simultaneous targets meant 7 perfect shots in rapid succession, before any of them could react and alert the others. The intelligence officer they were supposed to rescue was running out of time. According to their information, he would be moved to another location within the next 6 hours. If they didn't act soon, they might lose him forever, along with the critical information he possessed about planned terrorist attacks on American soil. Morrison gathered his team for a quick conference. "Options?" he asked quietly. Sergeant Thompson, the team medic, shook his head. "We could try to go around, but that adds 12 hours to our timeline. By then, the target will be gone." "We could call in air support," suggested Chief Petty Officer Davis, "but the compound is too close to civilian areas, too much risk of collateral damage." Rodriguez pulled out his tablet, showing satellite images of the area. "What if we create a distraction on the opposite side? Draw their attention while a smaller team moves in." Morrison studied the images, but he could see the flaws in the plan immediately. "These aren't amateurs. They'll maintain their positions and just add more eyes on the distraction. We'd be giving up our element of surprise for nothing." Maria had remained quiet during the discussion, still studying the enemy positions. Finally, she looked up from her scope. What if there was a way to eliminate all 7 simultaneously? The question hung in the air. Morrison looked at her with a mixture of hope and skepticism. "You're talking about 7 shots in maybe 30 seconds, before any of them can react or call for help." 20 seconds, Maria corrected. "Maybe less." Williams whistled softly. "That's impossible. Even if you could make the shots, the sound alone would alert them after the first one." Maria had been thinking about this exact scenario during their approach. "Not if I use the subsonic rounds and time it with the compound's morning call to prayer. The amplified sound from their speakers will mask the suppressed shots." Thompson checked his watch. "Morning prayers start in 40 minutes. Morrison felt a glimmer of hope. It was an incredible long shot. But Maria had never missed a target in any of their previous operations. Still, 7 targets in rapid succession was beyond anything any sniper had ever attempted in combat. "Walk me through it," Morrison said. Maria pointed to each sniper position in sequence. "Target 1 is at 11 o'clock. Approximately 750 meters. Slight elevation advantage, but he's exposed on his left flank when he shifts to cover the main approach. Target 2 is at 2 o'clock. 820 meters. But he has to lean out to get sightlines on our position." She continued through all 7 positions, explaining sightlines, exposure windows, and timing requirements. Her plan was audacious and required perfect execution, but it was their only realistic chance of success. Rodriguez was shaking his head in amazement. "Even if you could pull this off, you'd need someone to confirm each kill. If even one of them survives, and radios for help, we're all dead." "That's where you come in," Morrison said, understanding Maria's plan completely. "We'll need spotters on each position. Silent confirmation before moving to the next target." The team spent the next 30 minutes preparing. Each member took responsibility for observing specific sniper positions. Using hand signals to communicate, Maria checked and rechecked her rifle, adjusting for the changing wind conditions and double-checking her calculations. As the first sounds of the call to prayer began echoing across the valley, Maria settled into her firing position. Through her scope, she could see the first target clearly. The enemy sniper was focused on the approaches to the compound, unaware that death was watching him through a scope almost 800 meters away. The amplified voice of the prayer call grew louder, providing the audio cover Maria needed. Her finger found the trigger, and she began to control her breathing. 7 targets. 20 seconds. The lives of her teammates and the success of their mission depended on the next few moments. Morrison watched through his binoculars, knowing that what happened next would either save their mission or doom them all. The morning sun cast long shadows across the valley, as Maria prepared to attempt something that military historians would later call impossible. The call to prayer reached its peak volume as Maria's crosshairs settled on the first target. The enemy sniper was completely still, focused on scanning the valley below for any sign of American forces. He had no idea that salvation was about to become his end. Maria's first shot was perfect. The subsonic bullet traveled silently through the morning air, striking the target center mass. Through the spotting scope, Rodriguez confirmed the kill with a subtle hand signal. 1 down, 6 to go. Without hesitation, Maria shifted to her second target. The enemy marksman at the 2 o'clock position was partially concealed behind a rock outcropping, but his firing position required him to expose his torso. Maria compensated for the additional distance and the slight upward angle. Her second shot found its mark, just as the prayer call's volume swelled to mask the sound. Thompson, watching the second position, gave a quick thumbs up. 2 down. The third target proved more challenging. The sniper had chosen a position with excellent natural concealment, visible only when he moved to acquire targets. Maria had to wait for him to shift position, her finger steady on the trigger. When he finally moved to get a better view of the valley floor, Maria was ready. The third bullet struck him before he could settle into his new position. Williams confirmed the third kill, and Maria immediately transitioned to target number 4. This sniper was the farthest away, nearly 900 meters, and positioned at a significantly higher elevation. The shot required precise compensation for bullet drop and wind drift. Maria took an extra second to ensure her calculations were correct, then squeezed the trigger. The fourth enemy marksman crumpled in his position, never knowing what had killed him. Chief Davis confirmed the elimination with a clenched fist signal. Target 5 was positioned almost directly above the compound's main entrance, with an excellent view of all approach routes. This sniper represented the greatest threat to the team's extraction plans. Maria had to angle her shot carefully to account for the steep upward trajectory. The bullet struck its target perfectly, and Sergeant Thompson confirmed another successful elimination. 2 targets remained, but Maria was beginning to feel the pressure. She had been firing for nearly 15 seconds, and even with the prayer call providing audio cover, someone might notice the disturbances in the sniper positions. She needed to finish quickly. The 6th target was positioned on the opposite side of the compound, requiring Maria to swing her rifle significantly to the right. This sniper was partially hidden behind a makeshift barrier of rocks and sandbags, with only his head and shoulders visible. It was the most difficult shot of the sequence, requiring perfect precision at maximum range. Maria controlled her breathing, allowed for the crosswind that had picked up in the last few minutes, and fired. Through her scope, she saw the target's head snap back as the bullet found its mark. Rodriguez confirmed the sixth kill, holding up 6 fingers briefly. 1 target remained. The 7th and final sniper was positioned at the compound's rear entrance, covering the most likely escape route for the captured intelligence officer. This marksman seemed more alert than the others, possibly sensing that something was wrong. Maria could see him scanning his surroundings more actively, and she realized he might have noticed something unusual about the silence from the other positions. The call to prayer was beginning to wind down, meaning Maria's audio cover would disappear within seconds. She had to make this final shot count, and she had to make it immediately. Maria settled her crosshairs on the 7th target just as he began to turn his head, possibly to check on one of his fellow snipers. She fired at the exact moment he was most exposed, the bullet covering the 830-meter distance in just over a second. The final enemy sniper dropped out of sight, and Morrison, who had been watching the 7th position, confirmed the kill with a sharp nod. 7 shots, 18 seconds. 7 enemy marksmen eliminated without a single one being able to raise an alarm. As the call to prayer ended and silence returned to the valley, Morrison signaled for the team to advance. They moved swiftly but carefully across the now safe approaches to the compound, their confidence restored by Maria's incredible marksmanship. Rodriguez shook his head in amazement as they jogged across the open ground. "I still can't believe that actually worked. Best shooting I've ever seen," added Williams, checking his gear as they approached the compound's outer perimeter. The compound itself was a maze of mud brick buildings connected by narrow corridors and courtyards. Intelligence reports indicated the captured officer was being held in the central building, but the team would have to clear multiple structures to reach him safely. Morrison divided the team into 2 elements. He would lead Rodriguez, Davis, and Williams through the main entrance, while Maria, Thompson, and 2 others would circle around to the rear entrance to cut off any escape routes. The elimination of the 7 snipers had given them a crucial advantage, but the compound still housed an unknown number of enemy fighters. The team would have to move quickly and silently to maintain the element of surprise. As they approached the main building, Thompson spotted movement through one of the windows. Hand signals indicated at least 3 enemy combatants inside, and possibly more in adjacent structures. The rescued intelligence officer could be in immediate danger if the remaining enemy forces realized they were under attack. Morrison made a quick decision. Rather than risk a prolonged firefight that could result in the death of their target, the team would use flashbang grenades to disorient the enemy fighters and then move in for a rapid extraction. Maria positioned herself to cover the rear entrance while the main assault team prepared their breach. Through her scope, she could see into several windows of the central building, providing overwatch for her teammates as they prepared to enter. The next few minutes would determine the success or failure of their mission. The 7 enemy snipers had been eliminated, but the most dangerous part of their operation was just beginning. Inside that compound, a captured American intelligence officer waited for rescue, while an unknown number of enemy fighters stood between him and freedom. Morrison checked his watch and gave the final signal. In 30 seconds, they would breach the main entrance and begin the most critical phase of their mission. Maria remained focused on her assigned sector, ready to provide precision fire support if any threats emerged from the rear of the compound. The success of Maria's impossible shooting had brought them this far, but bringing everyone home safely would require perfect teamwork and a little luck. The breach happened with explosive precision. Morrison's team detonated their flashbang grenades and stormed through the main entrance, while Maria maintained overwatch from her elevated position. Through her scope, she could see enemy fighters stumbling through the compound's corridors, disoriented by the sudden assault. Thompson's voice crackled through the radio. Multiple targets moving toward the rear exit. "Maria, you've got 3 coming your way." Maria shifted her aim to the rear courtyard just as the first enemy fighter emerged from the building. He was carrying an automatic weapon and scanning for escape routes. Maria's shot dropped him before he could take more than 2 steps outside. The second fighter appeared moments later, this time showing more caution. He pressed himself against the wall, trying to use the building's corner as cover. Maria anticipated his movement and fired just as he attempted to sprint across the open courtyard. Her bullet found its mark, and the threat was eliminated. The third fighter proved more cunning. Instead of using the main exit, he climbed through a window on the building's side, dropping into a position that provided him cover from Maria's line of sight. She could see his muzzle flash as he began firing at Morrison's team from an unexpected angle. "Rodriguez, you've got a shooter on your left flank," Maria warned through the radio. Rodriguez spun and engaged the threat with a burst from his rifle. But the enemy fighter had good cover and was returning accurate fire. The situation was becoming dangerous for the assault team. Maria realized she would have to change positions to get a clear shot. She quickly displaced from her overwatch position, moving laterally along the ridge until she found an angle that allowed her to see the hidden gunman. The shot was challenging, requiring her to fire through a narrow gap between two buildings, but Maria had faced similar situations before. Her bullet struck the enemy fighter just as he was reloading his weapon. The threat was neutralized, and Morrison's team could continue their advance into the compound's interior. "Building secure," Morrison reported over the radio. Moving to the detention area. Inside the compound, the team had located the captured intelligence officer in a small, windowless room in the basement of the main building. Captain James Mitchell, a Defense Intelligence Agency operative, had been held captive for 6 days. He was weak from interrogation and poor treatment, but alive and conscious. "We're getting you out of here, sir," Morrison told him as Thompson checked his medical condition. Mitchell nodded weakly. "They moved most of their people out yesterday. Said something about expecting an attack. I think there might be more fighters in the outer buildings." Morrison processed this information quickly. If the enemy had anticipated their arrival, there could be additional threats they hadn't accounted for. The elimination of the 7 snipers might have been just the beginning of a larger defensive plan. "Maria, we need extended overwatch while we move the package," Morrison radioed. "Any sign of additional hostiles?" Maria had repositioned herself to provide maximum coverage of the compound and surrounding area. Through her scope, she was systematically scanning every possible hiding spot and approach route. The morning sun was now fully up, providing excellent visibility across the entire valley. "Negative on additional contacts," Maria reported. "But I'm seeing dust clouds to the northwest. Possible vehicle movement. Distance approximately 3 kilometers. Morrison felt a chill. Vehicle movement in this remote area almost certainly meant enemy reinforcements were approaching. The team needed to extract the intelligence officer and reach their extraction point before those vehicles could arrive and cut off their escape route. "How much time do we have?" Rodriguez asked. Maria continued to observe the approaching dust clouds through her scope. "Based on terrain and speed, I estimate 15 to 20 minutes before they reach our position." The extraction point was a clearing about 2 kilometers from the compound where their helicopter would meet them. Even moving at maximum speed while supporting the weakened intelligence officer, they would need at least 30 minutes to reach safety. Morrison made the decision that would save all their lives. "We're not going to make it to the primary extraction point. Maria, can you identify an alternate landing zone closer to our position?" Maria scanned the surrounding terrain through her scope, looking for any area large enough and flat enough for a helicopter landing. Most of the landscape was rocky and uneven, unsuitable for aircraft operations. Finally, she spotted a possibility. "There's a flat area, about 800 meters to the southeast, near the base of the ridge. It's smaller than ideal, but it might work. Rodriguez, get on the radio and redirect our bird to the alternate site," Morrison ordered. As the team prepared to move out with the rescued intelligence officer, Maria continued to monitor the approaching vehicles. What she saw through her high-powered scope made her blood run cold. "Lieutenant Commander, we have a problem," she reported. "Those aren't just random fighters. I'm seeing organized convoy movement. Multiple vehicles with mounted weapons. This looks like a planned response force." Morrison absorbed this information while helping Thompson support Captain Mitchell. The enemy had clearly been expecting some kind of rescue attempt and had prepared accordingly. The 7 snipers had been just the first layer of defense. How many vehicles? Morrison asked. At least 4, possibly more. Estimate 20 to 30 personnel. Heavily armed. The situation had just become exponentially more dangerous. Even if they reached the alternate extraction point, they would be vulnerable during the helicopter pickup. The enemy force would arrive while they were still on the ground, turning the extraction into a running firefight. Rodriguez finished his radio communication with their helicopter pilot. Bird is redirecting to the alternate site. But he's not happy about the tight landing zone. He says he'll need at least 2 minutes on the ground to get everyone aboard safely. 2 minutes on the ground while under attack by 30 enemy fighters with vehicle-mounted weapons would be a nightmare scenario. The team needed a way to delay the approaching force or eliminate the threat entirely. Maria studied the approaching convoy through her scope, noting their route and speed. They were following the only viable road through the valley, which wound between several rocky outcroppings before reaching the compound area. I might be able to slow them down, Maria announced. Morrison looked up at her position on the ridge. What do you have in mind? There's a narrow section of road about 2 kilometers out where they'll have to slow down for a sharp turn. If I can disable the lead vehicle, it might block the road for the others. It was a long shot, literally and figuratively. Maria would be attempting to disable a moving vehicle at extreme range while the team completed their extraction, but it was their best option for buying the time they needed to escape. As the team began their movement toward the alternate extraction point with Captain Mitchell, Maria remained in position on the ridge. Through her scope, she tracked the approaching convoy, calculating distances and timing. She would have one chance to stop the enemy reinforcements before they could interfere with the rescue operation. The helicopter's rotor noise began to echo across the valley as their extraction aircraft approached the alternate landing zone. Maria steadied her rifle and prepared for the most important shot of her career. The lives of her teammates and the success of their mission depended on her ability to stop 30 enemy fighters with a single bullet.